Yeah, it's Rock Salt MUZKAST Experience, and there's Aaron over there. And on the Zoom today, Aaron, we got Caleb from Stonewall Static.
A married man, Caleb.
Yeah, newly married.
Indeed, a married man.
Yes. How long now?
Year and about a year and 2 months now.
You gotta be a little quicker,
long.
Caleb.
I was
gotta be a little quicker with the.
I know.
What's your anniversary date, Caleb? You got to be able to ramble that thing off.
Oh.
See, I've been giving him tips, married tips.
Yeah.
Nobody gives.
That's it.
And yeah, you got to be able to ramble. I had to put it in my phone. I had to put them in and then I had to put a reminder like a week or two ahead of time.
Oh my gosh.
So when the wife says, "Hey, you know," and I go, "Oh yeah, I absolutely know." You know how I know? Because Siri told me.
I only remember. This is gonna sound so bad, but I only remember her birthday because it's literally the day after my dad's.
Okay.
And it's the day after Father's Day, so there's enough attached to it to where I'm not gonna forget it. So I mean, I'd probably remember it anyway, but I guess for the sake of comedy, it's funnier to think that that's the only reason I remember.
I don't know. That's how I do a lot of my dates. Like my wife's birthday is right on President's Day weekend and Valentine's Day, so I'm just in that weekend. And I do know the date, but you know, if I couldn't remember the date, I had that target to shoot for.
Whatever keeps you alive. You know?
That's it.
Yeah. But the anniversary date, dude, you got to stay. They test you. They do.
Yeah.
Like, you know, hey, so what do you got coming up on the weekend in 2 weeks? And if you answer wrong,
Yes. Yeah.
you're in trouble.
You're over. You're done.
That's it. And you can't pause.
Yeah.
You can't have the deer in the headlights look.
I'm gonna write a
You
book.
know.
You can't do the
I'm gonna write a book, Aaron. Marriage tips nobody tells you from Dave.
That's it.
I'd buy it.
Yeah, would you? Okay,
I'd
there's
buy it.
one.
I would buy it.
There's one.
So you got married. So what's been going on with the with Caleb and Stony?
So what has been going on? We recently we played like two comic conventions within 3 weeks.
Really?
Yeah, it was something very, very different for us. But our thought was, you know, let's try to break into some kind of a new space where we haven't seen a lot of our peers go. So this, y'all may know, I may have mentioned it before, but Stonewall Static also is Helium Productions, so you know we do a bit of both. And that was our selling point. We were like, hey, you know, we'll come in, we'll do y'all's production for like your main stages and whatever, but let Stonewall Static perform like either once or a couple of times, whatever you have the schedule for. So we did it twice, once in San Antonio, once in Corpus Christi, and it went amazing. There's you know, you're in a room full of nerds who all love music, and they eat it up, and I think they're also really happy to have you know, something with, you know, not to be braggadocious, but some entertainment value that's a bit different from what they're used to in that space come in and shake things up a little and bring a little bit more variety to their day, and you know, getting to provide that was a huge honor over those 3 weeks.
Now you didn't have to dress up like, you know, comic book characters or anything like that, did you? I mean, like, you know, the cosplayer.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, we just you know, showed up in our typical stage outfits, you know, did our thing. And I think in those spaces the goggles and scarf really sell well.
Yeah, you know what they do. I didn't think about that, but I think you're right. Hey, let me ask you about that though. Are you into the comic book thing? And when I say nerd, I'm one of those nerds too, by the way. I like going to cons. But is that kind of your scene? Do you like doing those things, or was this like you were kind of a duck out of water trying something new?
No, so I've been pretty um gung ho about that stuff for a long time. I love going to conventions. I think it's a blast. Uh, I like me and my like literally there are several conventions where me, Josh, and Daniel went to, completely dressed up and everything. Like it's it's something we've just always liked. And even my wife, who went with us to both of them this time around, she part of the reason that I feel like we get along so well is because, I talk nerd stuff and she'll talk it right back, and she almost knows more than I do. So, we all kind of live and breathe it a little bit. The
So is
only
the
one,
language of love nerd? Is that what you're saying?
it's one of them. It's
All right.
definitely one of them. And that makes me really happy. Like there was one Christmas where I got her a gift, right? I'll tell you what it is in a minute, but I showed this was before we were married. Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe we were married. I can't remember. See, now she's gonna
It's
grill me
already
later.
it's already happened, Aaron.
It's falling apart. It's all falling apart.
They're a year in. It's already happened. He's forgetting. Sorry,
But
honey, I forgot.
but so I showed my mom this gift, right? It was two things, and she was like, "Caleb, are you sure she's gonna like that?" And I was like, "Yes, trust me, she's gonna like that." She's like, "I don't know, it just seems more like your thing." And I'm like, "Why do you think I'm marrying her?" So I give her this gift, right? And it's this like limited edition, like full steel plated, like Spider-Man gauntlet, right?
Nice.
And she she like in front of my whole family, she opens this thing and she's like floored and in awe by it, and my mom's just standing there in disbelief. And I think that was the moment she was like, yeah, no, okay, this makes sense now.
Yeah. Well, the scene's really changed since, like, even when I was a kid, like 70s, it was said the comic books were such a niche thing. My brother was really into comic books, but I never was. And I got into it because I got my son going to free comic book day. That's really kind of how it all started, because I was like, oh, this will encourage him to read. And so we would go to free comic book day, and he got into it. And then because I'm going with him to stuff. So I like to go to the cons because I like meeting the celebrities. That's my thing.
Yeah.
But you're right.
I've never gone before last Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Dave, you talked about, we have a huge one here, Fan Expo
Yeah.
in San Francisco. So my youngest son, he's all into it, and the anime. And so I was like, let's go. I'll pay for the ticket. Let's go to the day together. I had a fantastic time.
Yeah, it's really fun. And but that is one of the things that they don't have. They don't have music there. And
Yeah.
that's my thing. I know I'm kind of out of the demographic, but that's my thing about going to the con. I'm kind of a man on the mission. It's like, I'm here to meet this guy, this guy, this guy. Maybe we'll go see this panel. I'm going to take some photos of the cosplayers and see some of the cool stuff that's out there. And I go see the vendors first, always. But and then I'm out. I'm like, okay, I'm man, I'm on a mission. But I do know that people like to go there and they hang out and they go check out different things. And it's music would be a nice addition to Fan Expo. I gotta say, I think you're on the right track there.
Yeah.
And even better if you start cosplaying it.
Yeah, right. We had some people telling us like, you guys should get on stage in full costume, and I'm like, that would be cool if if we didn't have to pay attention to branding.
Well, do a side project, just make yourself look like the Cantina band and play one song over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Need some sax players.
Yeah. Well, just play the track behind it. It doesn't matter. They don't
That's
even
fair.
Anyways, you're a two-piece now, right? You were a three-piece, now you're a two-piece. Is that right? Did I understand right?
Yeah, we are a two-piece now, and there's been challenges with it. We for those who don't know, we lost Daniel had to step back about 6 or 8 months ago, and just due to some personal reasons, no bad blood or anything. We're still like best friends. But me and Josh have been having to figure out, okay, there's this void that's an entire person that's just gone from not only the image, but more importantly for us, the show. So how do you compensate for that? Well, me and Josh have done shows as a duo before, but now it's different, because it's not just like, oh well, let's just make it through the show. It's like, okay, no, he's gone. So what we're doing is we're trying to come up with, and we actually start rehearsals for this on Monday. We're coming up with a show that's specifically for us two, and that in some of our theatrics also involves our crew as well. So really just trying to fill that void, and rather than doing a show that's designed for 3 people as 2 people, doing a show that's designed for 2 people as 2 people.
So this isn't even a joke. It's just the best way I can put this. Are you doing like a Daft Punk sort of thing, or like a Pet Shop Boys sort of thing, where it's, I mean, how are you making it all work with 2 people?
So there's a lot of people don't like the sound of this, but there's a lot of tracks involved. But we were also thinking, we're like, okay, we're musicians at heart. We don't want to just rely on tracks the entire time. So what we've come up with is, I'm going to be playing more than just the bass. Josh is actually going to have 2 drum kits. And one's a small kit that actually folds up into a suitcase.
Nice.
And that'll move around stage for certain purposes. But I'll be on bass, I'll be on guitar, I'll be on keys, jumping between the 3. I'm still currently deciding whether I want to incorporate ukulele in there, like, no joke, but we'll see how that goes. But yeah, just trying to bring up, basically, you've probably seen the whole joke, or not even joke, some people actually do it, of like a one-man band where some guy's got like a drum strapped to his back that he pulls a string, and a guitar, whatever, right?
Yeah.
We're basically trying to do that with 2 people at this point, just to keep that organic musicality in there.
I got an idea for you. This is going to help you, bro.
Shoot.
You know how like maybe you're too young for this, but Jimmy Page back in the day, he had like the 3-neck guitar, and the Cheap Trick guy, he's got the double neck guitar. Here's what you do. You get the bass. This is all in one guitar. The bass, the 6-string, the keyboard, and then the ukulele at the very bottom. And you got it covered, bro.
Yes. Perfect. Now I just got to pay someone $10,000 to custom build it.
There's always things that get in the way.
I know. He's always throwing hurdles, isn't he? Yeah. Well, but your music, see, I haven't seen your stage show. I've only know what I've seen in the videos and stuff, but you're a little electronic anyways, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you got a rock edge, but you're a little electronic anyways, right? So I don't think that I mean, for people in that are into that kind of music, they don't look at it the same as people who are just like hardcore rock people. Like, I want everybody playing live on stage see, I don't look at it that way. I look at it as we can get lots of different great music from lots of different ways. I'm against the AI thing because I don't think that's creative at all. But as far as, I enjoy the Pet Shop Boys. I saw them live. It was a great show. And it was just the 2 guys. So one singer, and the other guy was running everything off his laptop. Call it what you want. It's still a talent. It still worked. maybe I'm digging myself into a hole here. I just think that because you have that a little electronic side to you, it still works. And for any naysayer, just shit your mouth.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I
No,
mean?
I do. Our music is pretty electronic at times. It's electronic with a lot of rock elements. It's actually, if you really boil it down, it's quite pop. And using backing tracks and all that is not foreign to the pop genres. We kind of fall under alternative rock, but you know, a lot of alternative rock has that, you know, some of that electronic sound, especially nowadays, a lot of the up and comers. So it's not entirely foreign. It just depends on who you're in front of that approves of it
Appreciates, yeah,
more.
appreciates what
Yeah,
you're doing. And
yeah.
see, I guess that's what I'm kind of getting at, which is, you know, back in the 80s, I remember Janet Jackson was taking heat because you know, she lip synced. And she said, well, look at my show. I can sing to you or I can dance, but I can't do both because it won't be a good show.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you decide what you want. I don't mind singing. We all know Janet Jackson can sing, but
Yeah.
she can't be jumping around on stage doing what she does. And we both seen her. She does a great job. And I want to be entertained at the end of the day. Now, if I go see one of my favorite bands, Tesla, they've built their audience on the fact that they just do what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be a little disappointed if I go and I find out that, you know, they ain't singing themselves. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm not saying you don't sing. I'm just trying to, I think it all works. And I think people need to stop judging because you made it at some point. You're musically talented enough to make the song. Clearly, right?
Yeah.
Am I digging myself in a hole here, Aaron?
No.
Well, I just, have you had to change any of the things like musically, the songs you've already recorded to fit with the two piece?
Not really. No.
Okay.
We've kind of rolled, you know, how we've always been. Everything's stayed pretty much the same as it was, you know, we just you know, reduced by a person. But yeah, I mean, Dave, to what you were saying, like people underestimate a lot of the time what they're watching when they're sitting at a show, especially something of a caliber of like Janet Jackson or somebody who can fill an arena like that. They don't actually realize what they're watching. Because, and that's no knock on the audience, you're not supposed to know what you're watching. You're not supposed to know how much work went into it because sometimes it steals from the magic of it. You're supposed to
Right.
just look at it and be like, oh, this is great. But you know, once people see like, oh, you're not actually singing that, or you're not actually playing that guitar solo or something like that, you know, people feel like they're being lied to for some reason. But I feel like if more people understood how much time a lot of these artists put into their show and how much they actually give it that kind of attention, so that way they're visually compelling, I feel like a lot more people would be a bit more forgiving.
Yeah, I agree because there is so much behind the scenes that you don't know about. Yeah, I mean, it's even sometimes the artists don't even know about. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I guess a good way to find out is like that. There was that big festival out on the East Coast. I can't remember what the name of it was, but it just failed miserably, and people were stuck out in the rain and all kinds of nonsense. But um, uh, there was a whole bunch of behind the scenes stuff with the electricity wasn't right, the boards weren't right, the times weren't right, all these things weren't right for all these different bands, and that stuff has to be it's very choreographed. It has to run on time. It has to. You're a uh, visual heavy show, right? The show you put on has a lot of visuals in it, right? I'm going to assume you probably need a little more electricity going to your stage than say the dude who's doing the acoustic set. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can hardly run our show off of less than like 420 amp circuits. So it's a lot, especially for our scale specifically. Um, yeah, it can be a lot.
Yeah. So but you were talking about all the work, and I know you were talking from the artist side, and I'm talking from the behind the scenes, the backstage side. Is there's one dude running around organizing all that stuff. That's the tour manager. He's making sure everything's supposed to be the way it is. So that guy's under a ton of pressure, and because the audience is expecting you to start at 8, and I don't care if you're JoJo the Banjo Man that nobody's ever heard of, or you're Metallica. The audience is expecting you to be on stage at 8 or whatever time, be done by 10:30, whatever time, because the older we get, we're like, okay, I got to work in the morning. We might have to bail out of this one. It's getting to be 9:30, bro. But also, they want to know that their seats are all set up, the place is clean, the show's going to be good. You're not going to walk out on stage and have a bunch of technical failures. And I mean, there's so much that goes on that people don't realize. Now, I'm not talking about Milli Vanilli, who clearly didn't sing their songs. We know that those two guys had nothing to do with the music. But we're talking about people that put, and when I say this, I'm talking about Milli Vanilli versus Janet Jackson, by the way. We're talking about somebody who's done the music. We know she can do the music. I'd kind of like to go see Janet Jackson dance. I'd like to see the show. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's kind of the some of the perspective that we take, because for us, the way that we look at it, and we've seen it happen time and time again, is oftentimes when people are watching a show, they don't realize how much more important the visual is than the music. They don't realize it. They think it's all music, but it's truly not. Because I mean, I want you to think back, and anybody listening as well, just think back to a show you saw that was boring. Maybe the music was good, nothing wrong with it. What did the people on stage do? Did they just kind of stand there, other than like messing up or something like that made a show dull? Did people just stand there? Were they visually intriguing? Did they know how to talk to their audience? All of that stuff is truly what actually draws people into your music. So something has to come first to actually put people in the position to where they can actually receive your music, or else they're not gonna be able to tune into it, because there's you almost have to assume that everybody in your audience has insane crippling ADHD.
Well, they do. They have their phones in their hands.
Yeah.
They do. But it's kind of like this is my experience. Like my son and I, we went to see Guns N' Roses when they reunited. Sort of reunited. It's just three guys, in my opinion. But anyways, I wanted my son to see this band. And don't get me wrong, the show was great, but I walked away from it and I said to my son, I'm really sorry you didn't get to see the Axl Rose that assaults his audience. And I don't mean that. I mean that in a collective way, which is, you didn't get to see the real Guns N' Roses, the dude that ran around all over the stage and did all this crazy stuff. You got to see the old guy that can't do that anymore. He still did a good job singing, but he wasn't visually the show.
You didn't get to see the guy who was the actual rock star at the time.
Yeah. And that was a little sad. But on the other hand, I mean, I saw Green Day, and they had, before they were big, and they had nothing on stage, and they were a great show. So I think, but at the same time, we saw Lacey Sturm. She spent the first 18 minutes of her show talking before she even played a song. And I got it all on video. I was riveted. I couldn't put it down because she's so interesting. So I think each band or each musician brings their own thing to the table is what I'm getting at. And you're right. It's, you know, if you could be Lacey Sturm and maybe you don't have this huge stage production, but you're really interesting. You tell really interesting stories, and you had me hooked for 20 minutes straight before you even played a song. Or I've seen shows where I'm like, don't say anything, just play the songs. Oh, that's a fantastic show. So,
yeah, knowing your strengths is important.
Exactly.
Because I mean, like, nobody, there's very seldom people that I know that can pull off what you're saying Lacey did, because most of the time people most of the time people think they're much more intriguing than they really are. So they'll get up and they'll talk much longer than they're welcomed by the audience.
I'm one of those people, by the way.
so they'll be sitting there, talking, and everybody's getting bored. So, but maybe that same person is, such a good singer that their voice alone is like making you just sit there in awe, so it's really just about knowing those strengths.
What? Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I mean, I've seen so many different shows where, like, we've seen Crowder and he's got like 20 people on the stage, and I just went and saw NF, and it's just him and his drummer, but he used the visual so much to make it a fantastic show, besides the music he makes with the lights and all that. I mean, I showed someone the video I took of the show, and they're like, wow, he's got a great light show and everything. And I said he uses that to enhance the performance. But, people, because he usually doesn't say anything to the show, and other artists have been, getting on him about not saying anything. So he took time. He goes, well, people have been joking to me about not saying anything, so here it goes. And he was talking a little bit, and then he was like, well, that's enough of that. He signed a few things from the audience and then went right back to the performance. He probably thinks he's just not that interesting. And so, but I found the little conversation that he did have with the audience to be really good. But his thing is the light show, the visuals, and everything. Just like when you went and saw Pet Shop Boys, that's their thing. The visuals and all that. Where we went and saw Fozzy or Striper, and
I want to see Fozzy play.
Yeah, they're playing guitar, and Fozzy's interacting with the audience, and that's his gig. And there's so many different ways you can connect with the audience and give them a performance. It's just you have to choose how you do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, let me ask you, Caleb. You're in your 20s, right?
Yeah, 23.
Oh, okay. I wasn't asking specific, but that's okay. So what's that put you? Gen Zer? Is that right?
I think so. Yeah.
Something like that.
Not a millennial for sure.
Nobody wants to claim being a millennial.
Never heard one.
You're never going to be as cool as a Gen Xer just by name. You know what I mean? Gen X, just the name. I was so excited when I was found it. I was like, I can pull that part of that cool club over there. But anyways, as a Gen Z musician who puts on a spectacle of a show, a visual spectacle, right? How do you feel about somebody standing in the front on their phone through your show?
That's a good question, actually. I know a lot of people who that would irritate, but I've said this several times at my shows to the audience. Sometimes there's an audience that likes to sit. Sometimes there's an audience that likes to stand. And what you're there to do is you're there to provide them with a good time. So when I get on stage, when me and Josh get on stage, it's not for us. It's not about us. It's about giving them a good time by pulling them into what we want to do. If someone doesn't want to get pulled in, if somebody doesn't want to join in on what we're doing, you know, they have every opportunity to watch and see what we're doing and decide that. If they don't want to, well then, you know, I still get your cover charge at the door. Like,
Well, you know, I'm kind of old school, you know, back when back when we went to concerts, you couldn't even bring a camera in.
yeah.
You know, it would say right on the ticket, no cameras, no photo photography, all that's or video photography, you know. And you're speaking of Axl Rose assaulting the audience, that's where he assaulted the audience, was over a guy bringing a camera in and taking pictures of him on stage. And the reason for it back then, by the way, was you were stealing his likeness. That was something that they paid photographers to do. They sold those pictures. That was how they made their money. So they didn't want you taking that from them. And I understand that. That has really changed. But you know, I'm old school where I feel like the artist is on stage and this is their art, and I owe them the respect, even though I paid for my ticket. I owe them the respect of, you know, watching them perform. And so it does bother me when I see somebody just buried in their phone, to the point that, you know, it's like, well, I go, well, what are you standing in the front row for? You know, I understand. I've been in lots of shows where I have no interest in what's going on stage, but I'm there for the music. So I just enjoy listening to the live music. But I sit in the back for those shows because I don't need to be up at the stage. There's people that are bigger fans that are up at the stage. Do you understand where I'm coming from on that one?
Yeah, and I think there's definitely a bit of crowd etiquette there that, you know, a lot of people should take note of and understand, because, you know, depending on what show it is, there's people who waited in line all day, just to
Yeah.
get that one GA spot at the, you know, at the barricade. But, you know, then there's other people who it's like, you know, if I'm going to be on my phone or if I'm not too into it, you know, I'll be in the back because I don't care very much. Um, you know, so just that crowd etiquette is, I think it's important and crucial to a good show, especially for the audience's experience, so they don't have anything around them that they can point out like, hey, that's wrong, hey, that's wrong. You know,
Yeah.
you want everything to feel as smooth and streamlined as possible.
Yeah. I just wondered what if maybe, you know, a Gen Z artist would feel different about someone being on their phone in the front than, you know, a Gen X artist. Like what comes to mind is Corey Taylor from Slipknot when he, you know, grabbed that person's phone out of the front row and just threw it down or threw it out in the audience or something like that. I understand where he's coming from, but
Yeah.
I'm wondering if Gen Z, with their acceptance of the technology, do you feel different if somebody is Facebooking during this visual show that you know Stonewall Static is putting on?
Well, I'll say this: there's definitely, especially in my generation, I would like to think more than the millennials, though I don't have any concrete proof of that. I feel like there's a almost an urgency to go to concerts that there wasn't for a little bit. Um, People really tend to rally around it, especially in a time where you've got social media and everything, and, you know, media and stuff like that telling people, you know, hey, we're all divided, we're all divided. When people show up to concerts, though, that's a completely different story. You know, you see people of all kinds there who are like, you know, hey, we're all here enjoying this one band. And I think to a generation that's really, you know, bombarded by a lot of that, I think concerts have a big appeal. So I think of my generation, what I've experienced, what I've seen is most people, it's like the phones come out for the first song and then they kind of put them away until their favorite song comes on. They film that and then they're just kind of in the moment the rest of the time. Because I think there's a lot of a lot of people my age and younger that realize the need for moments like that, and to be in that moment, because I mean they're on their phones all the time. So I think for some of them, not all of them, when they get the moment to be in the moment, and a moment that they've been looking forward to and will enjoy, I think a lot of them would actually rather have the memory in their head.
Yeah. That's what's crazy, Aaron, is we experienced a time that you just went to shows. You just went to shows to talk to people, meet people. I mean, that's how we met, was standing in line for a concert. And you talk to people. You didn't have a phone to play games on to kill the time with or distract you or anything like that. You couldn't show anybody this really cool video you just saw, or even share the bands. You had to tell people about this cool band that you'd heard of, but you couldn't show it to them unless you carried their tape in your Walkman. So it's definitely a different time, and it's just odd that that's where the generational gap comes in, I think.
Yeah, I know.
You're not experiencing shows in the same way that your parents experienced shows. And
yeah,
but my parents experienced shows in pretty much the same way I experienced them, which was you went to the concert hall, you saw the band play, and you went home and you told everybody about it, and that was the end.
Yeah, I know you can watch almost full shows now on YouTube where people record it and know what's coming. I did that with NF a little bit because I was going to record some of the stuff to show people.
Yeah.
It is definitely a different time. And so,
well,
but
that's
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No. What were we going to say?
So that's another thing too. I'm glad you brought that up, Aaron. Because there's some people that also go to shows to film them out of hobby. That's also a thing. So you have, because you'll run into YouTube channels all the time where these channels are just known for, it's a guy who brings his phone to all of the shows and films all of them.
Have you been creeping the YouTube channel again? Well, see, for me, excuse me.
But also too, though, is when we and Dave were growing up, there was this thing called MTV, and they played music videos all the time.
That's crazy.
So
that's crazy. There was a TV channel called Music Television.
Yeah,
that played music.
Yes,
on the television.
Yeah, but a lot of the videos were live performances.
Yeah, so you got an idea of what the show was going to be like.
Yeah, and now, since that program doesn't play music at all, even though it's still called MTV, you don't get that. So you go to YouTube for the video content.
Yeah. Well, I remember you mentioned the live concerts. I remember seeing the Bon Jovi videos, because those were always exciting back in the 80s. That was a show you really wanted to see. And I saw Bon Jovi on the New Jersey tour with Skid Row opening. And I remember, the opening beats to the song. And then when the crescendo to the opening song, and John Bon Jovi shot up from the stage. And it was just like I saw in the video. It was great. It was a great show. And see, Caleb's thoroughly bored with my John Bon Jovi stuff.
No, Bon Jovi.
He's like, right, old timer. Okay, bummer.
The dude was the dude was kind of a pioneer for a reason. I mean, he had a great light show. He had a great.
Let's not go too far. Let's not go too far. You're giving John Bon Jovi too much credit.
But regardless, there are a lot of people that like him for that. A lot of people that have that kind of connection to him. I don't, but I know a lot of people who do. He had larger than life music videos as well to a lot of people. People. I think when people show up to the show, they expect to see that.
That album back then, it crossed all the boards. It didn't matter what kind of music you were into. Everybody had Slippery When Wet. Everybody.
Mhm.
I mean, and it had something for everybody, and it was mostly big hair and all that, but they had the power ballads. And, if you were a teenage guy, of course, the girls loved John Bon Jovi. So you had to have some Bon Jovi in your car, right?
Yeah.
Am I right? So,
Of
I
course.
mean, I don't know what it is for today. Now I'm sounding really old. What I mean,
Well,
I
I
don't
was
know
just
what
gonna
the equivalent
say
is
that
for today.
that doesn't happen anymore. There's no artist that it's like, oh, you got to have that in the car because, pardon me, if I'm gonna kiss on a girl, I need to have this in my vehicle. Now it's like you have something in your phone to where you can pull up everything from the Wiggles to Slipknot if you want to.
Yeah, that really is the downside to the digital. I mean, look, I love Spotify. I'm a geek for Spotify, and I wish more stuff was on Spotify because I'm such an audiophile. I just like having all that stuff at my fingertips. The downside to it is I miss going to Tower Records and talking to the snooty teenager behind the counter who's going to judge me because I bought John Bon Jovi's latest album. I miss that. There was a community there. And also, it was something to look forward to, the new album release, or you know what, I'm gonna have to wait till payday to get that CD. It was we're on demand, I think. It's kind of
Well,
taking the spark and magic out of it.
and that's another thing too that I think with my generation as well, they've recognized that, and they're like, well, I want novelty back in my music. Like, uh, I know several people, and I mean, even me and my wife do. We collect vinyl.
Yeah.
We have a vinyl player. We
You
collect all
called
our
it a
favorite
vinyl
artists.
player. I love
Record
it.
player, whatever. But uh, we've got all that, and there's even, heck, I mean, she's been obsessed with it for days. There's this there's this app that my wife has, and it's have I sound like I'm giving the reverse old person talk. This may be beyond your time.
Okay.
Have y'all heard of Pokemon Go?
Yeah. I've never played
So
it, but yeah.
so it's like an app, right? Where it's like, you take your phone, you have your location on, and you go collect these little creatures, that are wherever in the world or in your neighborhood. They can't Someone came out with a version of that for music, right? So instead of little creatures, you're collecting, and in the app, like, trading with people, like different albums and stuff. So, and she's been obsessed with it. And it's like, I think it's funny because like, it doesn't really make much sense, but there's a novelty to it that, people want to engage further with their music than just pulling it up on Spotify and just playing it. They want to go a
Right.
little deeper than that.
Well, they feel ownership when they buy vinyl. And just
Yeah.
like we had CDs and
Yeah.
cassette tapes and all that, and I think it's making sort of a comeback. The vinyl has.
Well, you know what I think is it went through this era where it was all or nothing. It was all CDs, no tapes. It was all records and no, you know what I mean? Where like back in the 70s, it was you could get this on cassette, vinyl, or 8-track, whichever you like. And if you were really special, you had one on reel to reel. But that was really too much work. But what I'm getting at was we got to this point of, oh, well, CD sales are done. It's all digital now. And I didn't think that way. I thought that with the downloads and all that, with the Napster and all that, I kept saying, if you just put out a product I wanted to buy, I would buy it.
Yeah.
Give me the liner notes again. If you're collecting vinyl, there was really cool stuff when you got a gatefold and you opened it up, and there was all this cool imagery or whatever was in there. Give me songs I want to own. You know what I mean? That I want to. There came this point, roughly just prior to the Blink 182 era, I'm going to call it, where it was like As long as a song had one hit or an album had one hit song on it, they'd package it up and sell it for $20. And you'd find out that 9 of the other songs on the album were total garbage that you never wanted to hear. And that's my opinion as to why Napster took off. That's why I did Napster and all that. Was I don't want to pay $20 for this garbage. I just want the one song. And I
Yeah.
could not buy a single anymore. I had to buy a whole album.
You want to know an interesting little statistic? We had, when we released our first album, Transistor, we bought 100 CDs to start, right? We bought 100 CDs and 100 download cards, right? So these download cards are just like, they're like little credit card things, but on the back they have a code to where you can go and download the digital album. For every 100 CDs that we sold 50 download cards. People don't like the downloads, it seems. You know, they like having the physical CD and the novelty of that way more than a digital card that it's just like, oh, I'm gonna go put this on my phone now, you know, because there's no memory attached to that.
Right. It's, I bought plenty of, I'm looking at my vinyl right now. I've got these box sets and stuff that some we haven't even opened because I'm like, oh, it's going to be way more valuable. Just seal it, leave it sealed. That's where I go. I can get the stuff on Spotify. I don't have to pop that one open, but I have others that there's these box sets that have so much cool stuff in it. I'm like, just open all this stuff. This is cool. People want to be able to connect. And why do you think when you go to car shows, you see all those signs on the cars that say, please don't touch? It's how we connect with things. I can sit there and look at that beautiful car all I want, but man, I really want to touch it.
That's a great point, actually.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's why Funkos did so well. That's why I still buy Funkos. I go to these cons. And that's what I have them sign. Funkos. I got all these things.
I was thinking the same thing, because when you go, jumping back on the convention thing, when you go to a convention, it's not enough just to look at the Funkos. You want one.
Have one. Yeah, you gotta have one. And it's like I bought. Yeah, you buy them. You pay these celebrities, and that's how they make their money. I bought plenty of autographed pictures. But if I can get an autographed Funko, I'm way happier with an autographed Funko than I am an autographed picture. Why? I don't know, but I am. You know what I mean? And it's got that something to do with it's an object that dude was that character in that movie, and he touched this and he signed it, and you know what I mean? It gives you that connection. And I think that's why, I look down on like rock stars, not yourself, Caleb, but rock stars that don't want to sign stuff, or you know what I mean? I'm too busy for that. Or I bought you the Heroin Diaries for Christmas.
Yes.
From Nikki Sixx.
Yeah.
And he was doing a special anniversary edition of it or something like that. Autographed up. I was like, yeah, autograph book. That's cool. I'm going to get that. And then it said autograph plate, which is just Nikki Sixx signed a sticker and they put the sticker in the book. It's not an autograph book. I want nothing to do with that because Nikki didn't handle the book.
Yeah.
I bought you the Dan Bongino book, and it's signed.
Yeah.
Something about that though is like, I got this. So
yeah.
Now, Caleb, we got pedestrian vibe. Yes.
That's the one with the metal song. Give that kid a medal.
Yes.
I like that song. I still like that song, Caleb. That's a good song.
So. That's great.
Yeah. So what's upcoming? Well, I mean, it's been out for a year now.
Yeah.
So you got new stuff in the works?
Yeah, there's new stuff in the tank. We haven't mentioned this yet, and it feels weird. It feels weird finally mentioning it. It almost feels wrong. But but for since we got the news that Daniel was stepping down, we felt like it was time to, to help us, rebrand and everything. We felt like it was time for new music. So for the past like 8 months, we have been quite literally slaving away at a new record that is currently fully written, recorded, and is getting mixed and mastered as we speak.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Now, where do you find your inspiration? I mean, what are you listening to besides 21 Pilots that's inspiring you to write the new album?
Man,
I mean,
it's a tough one.
I'm not trying to get Christian on this.
Yeah.
We know your inspiration. What I'm musically, what are you listening to that's influencing what you're writing?
I listen to, I hate being one of these guys. I listen to a lot of everything. But to make that answer more interesting and get specific, I listen to a lot of rock, a lot of metal. But at the same time, I'm also taking in a lot of pop music. There's artists like Matchbox 20 and Goo Goo Dolls that have kind of a long lasting influence on what we do. But more recently, there's artists like Half Alive and Water Parks and the alternative realm that that really are good inspiration for the kind of sound that we're trying to take without being deliberate rip-offs. But bands like the one of them I've been listening to a lot lately. I highly recommend this band. It's a group called Four Stroke Baron. They're not very I hate saying this, they don't get the credit they deserve, or the listeners that they deserve for sure. They should be like way up there in the 100 millions in my opinion. But these guys have crafted this brilliant merge between like prog and metal, and with a lot of like pop elements in there too, and but no screaming, and just the guy has a voice that's just so unique. It's absolutely majestic. But yeah, just a lot of different stuffs, because the way that I look at it is you take in as much as you possibly can, throw it in a pot, mix it around, and whatever you like, and once it's done cooking, it's like boom, there's your sound this time around.
So do you write songs you like to hear?
I do. The artist's dilemma, though, is that my songs are never good enough. And not as in like, oh, they'll never be good enough, but it's like I can't, since they're mine, I don't enjoy them the same way that I enjoy other people's. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy my own music, but it's like, I'm always looking at it from a perspective of, oh, well, I want to do this differently, or I want to do this better. But when you're making art, there's a point where you just have to step back and say, okay, this is it. And you send it off into the world and you let it go.
See, I've always wondered that. I know that bands, when they start out, especially, you're talking about like the teenager bands and stuff like that, and I'm going to be a metal god one day type of thing. I know that they're writing the music that they would want to hear. And that makes sense because maybe somebody else isn't making that music. Okay. But at the same time, they turn a point where it becomes a job. And I'll use Metallica as an example. Anytime you hear a Metallica steering off course and wanting to do something a little different, their fans go crazy. And I think in this day and age, if you want to steer off and do something else, you're more than welcome to call it something else and just do that. Just do a side project of whatever you want to do, but don't slap that brand on it, because it's not that brand. It's like it's like slapping a Coke brand on a Pepsi product. You know what I mean? If I wanted to buy a Pepsi, I would have bought a Pepsi, but you called it Coke, so I grabbed it and it's not Coke, and I'm disappointed. So,
Yeah.
you know, I guess what I'm getting at is I've always kind of wondered, at what point did this person stop writing the music that they wanted to hear and started writing the music that the audience was consuming? And I leave record companies out of that because 9 times out of 10 they're wrong anyways. So,
yeah, a lot of that, I mean, it's understanding that a lot of what you've created belongs to, once you send it out into the world, it in a weird sense, it kind of belongs to your audience. So you have to keep in mind that, they've grown a relationship with you as one thing. But you also, I think it's important as an artist to keep those people kind of conditioned to you wanting to change. So for me, I know in a lot of ways that comes with throwing an outlier song on a record. That's just like, oh, this sounds completely different, because, if I decide to go that route in the future, people have something to call back to. They're like, oh, well, this kind of sounds like this song from this record, so people aren't totally being thrown off or taken by surprise. And I think that's also a good reason to change your sound a little bit each record, because when you do that, people gain that expectation.
Yeah, well, and it shows growth. You're not, look, to use the Metallica thing again, if they hadn't veered off the course and made the Black Album, I wouldn't be listening to them. I mean, that was the one that got me listening to him. I know it's the one that got Aaron listening to him. How long would that old thrash metal really have worked in the long run? I don't think they'd be as big today as they are if they hadn't taken some, some turns along the way and grew.
Well, that's what when we've had our Bon Jovi arguments, you're like, well, this album sounds exactly like this album. It sounds like this album.
Yeah, don't take this the wrong way, but Caleb, but I think John Bon Jovi turned the corner when he married. It took the edge off of this music.
Yeah, but I mean, they all sound pretty similar.
Yeah,
and that's and that's your argument. There's no real growth.
Well, I think that artists, especially musicians, need some opposition in their life, some adversarial thing, some kind of drama to fuel, because that's where the best music comes from, isn't it? I mean, really, do you agree, Caleb? You're a songwriter.
I would. I think that if you've been given everything your entire life, your music is going to sound very different from somebody who's either been, struggling all their life or has made a lot of mistakes. On one hand, you might get, some rich kid who thinks like, oh yeah, I can make music, and it's, about going clubbing or something, and it's like, okay, well, there's no real substance there. Is that your entire life? Well, yeah. A lot of the time your music, and that's not every case, but a lot of the time your music reflects your experiences. And I know that that's the case for me. And especially writing this recent record, a lot of the perspective for that record was acknowledging more acknowledgement of my own depravity. And like a lot of the tone this time around is gonna be, it's gonna be much darker than it's been. It's not, and it's not gonna, it ends with a good resolve, like the whole album, the story that we kind of tell with it. But it's, you know, it's one that we're all still kind of learning. You know, we never fully know the depth of how, just, you know, how disgusting we can be as humans, and how much we actually need Jesus. And I think the more that you're able to, I think I'll put it this way. I think the more that God allows you to go through those realizations and failures, in helping you realize that, I think people, a lot of people's art really benefits from it, because I mean it turns very real very quickly, and it becomes something that a lot of people will connect to, just by kind of by default. Because I mean, if you're, not to get too Christian, but I mean, if you're getting sanctified daily, you know, why wouldn't a story like that, you know, mean more and more and more to you, you know, as the Lord continues to work on you.
Right. You know, I think that's a good point. Art is kind of the secretion of what of you, right? And whatever you're going through. And when I say secretion, I mean, like, you know, you sweat, right? And you're sweating because you're working hard and it's hot out. And that's what you produce out of that. And it's kind of like that. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense that way. But and I think that when a lot of people uh, succeed, reach the top or whatever you want to say, you know, they have that cushion. They don't know what it's like to really sweat anymore. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and so now it's become a job. And look, he's, for some people, it still works for him. That's great. Whatever. Just put out good music I enjoy. I'm probably not going to connect with it on that level anymore, though. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
song's not going to speak to me the same. Hey, on to something else, because I know you got, and I want to we'll come back to the album. All right. But being such a visual show, you got to keep people interested in this show. So, uh, how do you decide what you're going to change up from show to show? How does the visual on stage show evolve and grow with the band?
A lot of it is trial and error. But a lot of it is also stepping back and looking at what did work, and okay, well, how do I do that and accomplish that in a new way? How do I keep it fresh? Because you can start out with a great idea, you know, build a show off of it, and it's great, but you know, your audience can only see the same trick so many times. So really, it's how do I take what I know and what I know works and what gets people to respond, and how do I make it new? How do I flip it on its head? Um, how do I make those on stage or audience to me interactions deeper or fresh again? Sometimes it's just looking at what other people have done, and saying, how can I put my own spin on that? Sometimes it's also deciding what you've done that you're like, no, we're going to keep that. We're not going to get rid of that because people respond to it so well. And it's, you know, it's because sometimes there's things you do that become a staple. And you don't want to, kind of like we were talking about with changing sound too abruptly. You don't want to take that from people. So a lot of factors like that go into it. Talking with talking and inquiring with industry professionals who have done it a long time and also know what works and doesn't work. So I would say a lot of it is trial and error. You come up with a creative idea and sounds good in your head. Sometimes the only way to know that it works is by giving it a try. Whether that's live or in rehearsal. Sometimes you can tell when it'll work, sometimes you can't. But you take the resources around you and figure out what you can create with it.
Let's if let's say I've never, and like I said, I've seen the videos, but let's say I've never seen Stonewall Static and all. I've never heard of Stonewall Static. You're a fan of Stonewall Static. What are you going to tell me about their stage show that is just going to make me want to go to see this show? What do you do that's different?
We do a lot, to be honest with you.
But give me like, oh my gosh, it was so amazing. They opened up and you wouldn't believe that. You know what? I was watching last with Newsboys when the drum kit raised up, flipped over, and I don't want you to give away the whole shebang, but what is one thing in your show that just I gotta see that?
He has this like flashlight gun that he like shoots, and it syncs up with these beats and the music, and then there's a part at the end where like he's got this light up suit that just comes on and starts twinkling while like a bunch of like foam confetti falls from the ceiling. There's like fog jets that like sit overhead that shoot down at the crowd. There's these moments where Josh, the drummer, will get up and he'll walk center stage, and there'll be two drums center stage, and he'll just do this two drum solo with these sticks that light up. There's what else? There's choreographed moments where like the crew will come on stage and dance with Caleb, and they'll it's all perfectly timed and everything like that. Or like Caleb will like do a trust fall backwards, and then someone will come up and catch him and push him back up. There's gonna be parts where like people are holding like handheld lights that are synchronized with the show, and they're like following him across stage. Like, it's just the goal's nonstop action.
Cool. Yeah, I'd like to see that.
So, when is the album gonna be?
The wretched.
When's the album dropping?
When's the album? Yes, there we go, Dave.
When's the album dropping? I don't want to say the same stuff that I've said for Pedestrian Vibe.
When it's ready.
When it's ready. The reborn answer when it's ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
The first time I heard that.
I mean, the idea. I mean, we're in very final stages right now, and we're trying to really expedite those stages as well. But the idea is the moment that it's ready, we will immediately turn around and prep for release. There's going to be no waiting, no holding. The goal was always to see how quickly we could get it out. So in doing so, we've given ourselves deadlines, but we haven't set up release dates because we've been plagued by setting release dates previously, as many saw with Pedestrian Vibe, where it was about a year and a half late. So
well, better late than never.
It's true. It's true.
Do you get like when you think, oh, all right, I finally got the package together, and then you go back and you listen to it again, you go, I want to do this part different, or I got a better idea for. Does that happen a lot?
It does. I have a lot of those notes for Pedestrian Vibe. Not so much Transistor, because I give myself a lot of slack with Transistor because it was my first shot of making music and putting it out to the world, and I like letting it be what what it is. I'm sure pedestrian vibe will become the same thing the further down the road that I get. But you know, I always have tons of notes where I'm like, oh, that could be better. Like even I was even thinking last night, there's a line in our song Odd Duck Inn where um it's a line about a guy at a table in a food court, you know, waving to somebody and saying, "Hey, come sit with me." The line was, "I shoot them a wave and a simple hey, you can sit with me." And I was like, why would I say it like that? Because shoot them a wave. If I sing that too fast, it sounds like I'm saying shoo them away.
Oh,
And so my thought was, why didn't I say like I can't remember what I came up with last night, but you know, there's always little notes like that that I'm like, you know, I should have changed that. But you know, like I was saying earlier, there's a point where you have to step back and say, okay, this is it. This is the piece of art, and I'm gonna let that go into the world.
you know, when I listen to this show back, most times I'm listening to what the guest is saying, and as I'm driving in my car, I think to myself, oh, I should have said this, and then I say it on the recording, and I went, oh no, it's perfect.
Yeah. Sometimes that happens too, though. Sometimes you like, I mean, there are two songs that are going on the record that I was like, there's no way. I was like, these aren't going to get on there. I'm not going to put these on there. They're just not there. They're not good. And then the rest of the guys heard it, like Josh, my dad, Jedi, our stage tech, my brother Isaac, and they were all like, dude, why wouldn't you put this on there? And I'm like, because it sucks. And they're like, this is amazing. And I'm like, I still think it sucks, but if y'all want it, sure.
I mean, that happens a lot though, where an artist will come up with a song they just hate, and you hear it all the time, especially from the classic rock people. I just hate playing that song every single night, but everybody else likes it, and I always thought it was a throwaway, but whatever, if they like it, they like it.
Well, it's like Right for the Party by Beastie Boys.
How so?
It was the last album. They were looking for one more song, and they're like, well, one of the band members was in a punk band, and they had the song "Fight for Your Right." So well, let's get this one. We'll just do this one, throw it on there, and then boom,
isn't that
that was it?
So when you try something new visually on stage, or you try a new song that maybe you hadn't released and you're going to try it live, that sort of, do you see it in people's faces what works and what doesn't?
Absolutely. As a front man, you feel it. If you're in tune with your crowd, if you know what you're looking for, you feel it and you can tell. There's a response that happens when you know it's working, and there's a feeling you get when you realize that it's falling flat and it's not working. So yeah, there's a lot of times where that'll happen.
Well, and unfortunately, when it's not working, you can't bail out of the song. Like a comedian, if it's not working, they can bail out of the joke and move on to something else. You've got to finish another 2.5 minutes or whatever it is you got to get through before you can not do that again and try something else, right?
Yeah, and the tendency, and any artist will tell you this, when that starts happening, the tendency is to try to overcompensate for it and start, okay, well, what can I do to gain the crowd back? What can I do? But honestly, what I found is the best way to handle it, just keep playing the song like you originally intended. Just get through it, Don't try to do anything extra, because then you're going to start screwing everything up.
Yeah, when you try to layer it
on. Been there before.
Yeah.
Well, too many times. Too many times, my friend.
My friend used to love to tell me this story that I told on the radio, because I was trying to make a connection between Queen and Gary Sharon from Extreme, and I never should have done it in the first place, but it never worked. But it was like 5 minutes of me trying to dig myself out of this hole, and he laughed about that story for years and years and years, because at one point I said, I swear I'm not stupid. So yeah, but I mean, it's a little easier, but you know, and you can't overcompensate. That's the problem is you're thinking in your head, oh, this, okay, I can still make this work. And it just never works because you've already lost the audience. And they've, you know, picked up their phone in many cases right nowadays. And uh, so do you like go back and try to tweak stuff, or you just go, yeah, I'm not going to do that ever again?
It depends. Most of the time we like all of our songs, so we like playing them live. Um, so we'll oftentimes just take it back to the drawing board and we'll rework it. And we'll figure out how to make it work, because there is always a way to make a song work live. It's just about knowing where. Sometimes it's not even a matter of how you perform the song. Sometimes it's where it's placed in the set.
Really?
Because yeah, absolutely, yeah, set placement is everything. Because there is there is an arc that your show has to have. um and there's a couple of ways to do it, but there's an arc that your show needs to have, in order to really pull your audience in and make them feel like, you know, what you're doing is coherent, like you're being almost like you're being told a story just by energy level of each song and emotion. So, you know, let's say you may start at, you know, 5 being the highest energy, 1 being the lowest energy. You may start at a 3, you know, go down to 2.5, and then come up to a 4, and then whatever. But, you know, there are methods to that where you're creating a set list that makes people feel like you're taking them somewhere. And if you throw a song in at the wrong time and people aren't ready for it, they may not respond as they would if you put that song somewhere else.
Wow, that's interesting. It's the psychology of song placement, I guess, really, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it's how you can control the show as well, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's a great word, actually, because have you ever seen shows where the front man, maybe it's a local show or a regional show, whatever, where the front man is like, hey, you know, like, let's get into this, guys, jump with me or whatever. He'll be like, you know, come closer to the stage, but nobody does anything.
Right.
A lot of that is because the audience doesn't feel comfortable. Well, okay, why doesn't the audience feel comfortable? Most of the time it's because you haven't fully taken charge of the room. And the way you take charge of the room isn't just by being like, yeah, come on, get over here. Because I've seen guys do that so many times, and that doesn't work fully either. So
Right.
it's a mixture of the
Which is more
confidence.
embarrassing because the audience
Absolutely.
can respond.
Absolutely. So it's a mixture of the confidence, but a lot of what it is you have to have full control of everything that's happening, and the audience wants you to, because once you have control of the room, once they've identified that, okay, this guy's got this, you know, he's in control of the room, that makes the audience feel safe, because they don't feel like it's going to fall apart, or they don't feel like anybody's watching them. They're like, oh, everybody's watching him, and they can just get fully absorbed into it. And that comes from, you know, your stage presence, the way you set up your set list, the antics that you do on stage, you know, literally even how all the way down to where you're looking and how you angle your body at times. There's tons that goes into it. And it's a lot to learn. It's a lot of info to take in. And you know, if a lot more people knew about all that, you know, you'd see a lot more crowds that would be much less afraid to engage.
Well, you know, it's interesting. I still find this interesting to this day. I saw the band The Struts. The first time I saw them was in a club up in Reno. And I remember this show because it was the only show that I've ever been to where I saw 100% audience participation. There's always that one person, usually me, who's not participating. And but everybody, I looked around, everybody, when he said, okay, get down on the ground, we're gonna, you know, and you knew the song already, you knew it was gonna be a jump song, and everybody just jumped up at the right, and it was so cool because it was everybody involved, everybody connected. It was we were all doing this together. It wasn't just the audience and the band. It was everybody doing it together. And I never put the thought into it. I mean, I knew there was a bit of song placement because I like to see shows where they come out at using your scale, a 4 or 5, just slap me in the face, and then I'll let you drop down to a 3, and then midway through you can hit me with your power ballads and that sort of thing, or an acoustic set, or little palate cleanser. But I want to end at a 4 or 5 too. So I like that kind of roller coaster.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's people that like it a different way, but yeah, I never thought that the song placement in that particular show might have had something to do with the way it ends. I just know that when I go see a Struts show, I look around and I see people that would never be into the Struts dancing around and having a good time.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Yeah.
That you draw in. They may not listen to your music outside of the show, but at the show, they're totally into your music, totally into the show, and they connect with you on stage. And I've been to shows where there's no connection, and I've been to shows where like there's immediate connection with the audience. I remember seeing you for the first time on Sound for the Crown, San Antonio. You were the last person on the Friday night, and you had like an opening bit, and it's like 10, 9. And even though I'm watching on the television, you start to see the kids, as the countdown is, start to come to the front because they know when the show's about to start. And I said to myself, Caleb knows how to put on a show and draw the kids in. I just remember the first time I saw this artist. Now I'm going to date myself. A guy named Steve Taylor. He just came out with an album called I Predict 1990. And he came out to the Perry Mason theme song. I watched Perry Mason with my mom all the time. I was hooked. Now, again, I was a huge fan of his, but I was hooked to what they were doing from the start because it was like, this is really cool. This is really cool. And I wish more artists would do that to draw the fans in instead of just come up there. Hey, we're here. We're playing a song. And I'm like,
well, I saw a pretty big band, and at the end of the show, and by the way, I'm not a fan of I don't know if you do this, so I apologize in advance, but I'm not a fan of the encore thing. But so this band did not do the encore, but instead at the very end, they just walked out with a boom box, set the mic on the floor next to the boom box. It was a cassette of 99 Loop Balloons, and the lights came up, and everybody there was looking at, going, "Is the show over? Is this part of the show? I don't know." Because there was no encore to tell me it was over, yet nobody said goodbye or thank you very much, or there was no ending to the show. And just left confused, right?
Well, now, Dave, the end of the show is when the band takes a selfie with the audience.
Yeah.
That's please. I don't know if you do that, but I just don't. I'm not a big fan of that.
I've never done it.
But I guess that's knowing you've made it big time is when you could take the picture. I with the selfie with the crowd. I sort of like, where they have the photographer come out and they take the picture with the band behind them.
Yeah.
But I've seen, let me take a selfie with the crowd.
Well,
I'm done with that.
I like selfie with the crowd, and I understand selfie with the crowd with a smaller size band. But and I'm just using Metallica as an example. I don't even remember if they do that. But when you get to Metallica, Rolling Stones, Guns N' Roses side, you don't need that selfie with the band because you've been to that city probably 100 times already.
And the going back to like like the boombox thing, right? It's like the weird thing about it, right, is that there's no cue to the audience, like you were saying. You have to cue your audience. You have to make sure that they know what's happening, like where you're taking them. So like for us, having at the end of our show, um this cool moment with this flashlight gun and light up jacket, and then foam confetti coming down from the ceiling, people know, okay, that this is probably the end of the show. And then to cap it all off, we have them sing the last chorus with us one last time. Josh gets up from his drum set, and then we both take a bow, and then We Built This City by Starship comes on.
There you go.
And then we get off stage. People know what's happening. And once you do that, people are like, oh, okay, I didn't have to wait for them to pull out their phone from their pocket and take a selfie with me.
You know what I would do is I just play the Looney Tunes, that's all, folks. At
Yeah.
the end with,
Yeah.
and walk away. Don't say anything. Just have the screen show that as you just walk away.
Yep.
Well, Caleb, thank you for coming on the show today. You got the album coming up when it's done. And what shows do you have upcoming around the globe?
Yeah. I don't know when this is coming out, but on the 7th of July, we are playing Audio Feed Festival in Urbana, Illinois. Hopefully I pronounced that right. And then Springfield, Missouri, back again, of course, for Chains Unchained Festival. That'll be on July 20th. We've got we may have some stuff coming up in August, but that's kind of most likely going to be the month where we're finalizing the album's release and all of that stuff. So there might not be too much happening there, but you can probably expect some new music at that point. So there's your closer to a release date. And then after that, we have Rockin' the Railroad in September, and that's at, what is that again? Pacific, Missouri. That's at the end of September, and then Rockin' the River, which is October 4th through 6th. So
You guys are busy.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, that's a good thing. And you got a name for this album when it comes out?
we do. We're
He's
not fully ready to say
Announce?
what the name is, but
Okay.
but there is an image. There is an image on Facebook and Instagram that keeps updating, and it is we add a letter every couple of days, and right now this is where it's at. It's kind of hard to see, but there's a couple of letters in there.
Okay.
So if people want to go and check it out, maybe try to figure it out, feel free.
Okay. It's not 21 Pilots.
No, shockingly.
The letters come in and out behind your head. That's why I was asking.
That cat, are back there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you, Caleb, for coming on, and I'm so happy that you got new music coming out, and you're playing as much as you want to, or and I would tell people, go to stonewallstatic.com, find out more information about Caleb and his brother.
Buy a shirt, see a show.
Yes. They very visual, guaranteed. And so thank you, Caleb, for coming on, and we hope to have you on maybe next year. We won't wait 2 years. I think it was over 2 years we had you on.
Well, he was a little busier.
Yeah, that's true. Getting married and everything,
all that
and
stuff.
And so I just had to book. I just had to book it through his wife now.
Yeah.
I think that's
exactly.
Is she
You'll
the
have to fight her
California
for
now?
my time.
Yes. Yes. Well, thank you for letting you chat with us today. That would be good.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
Yep.
Hey, thanks, Caleb.
Thanks, Caleb.
We'll talk to you soon.
Yep.
Talk
And
to you guys
everybody
soon.
else, happy trails, everybody.
Happy trails.
Hey, Caleb.